may be fined under 18 U.S. Code and shall be in prison not less than 10 years. And then the other part I don't understand, if you would clarify this, and may be in prison for any term of years or for life. So I don't know what that means. Is that a drafting error? Or?
Again, the crux of this issue with the enhanced penalties requires a conviction before the enhancements are applied. So if someone is convicted of a felony, deported, and then illegally re-enters, or if there's enhancements that are spelled out on page 5, that's when the enhanced penalties are triggered.
But can you just explain, what does it mean to say, shall be in prison not less than 10 years? That does sound like a mandatory minimum, which I thought you were disclaiming before. Then, and may be in prison for any term of years or for life. Then suddenly it can become a life imprisonment. Is that right?
There's the way it's written, there's flexibility there, up to life. That's the intent of the bill.
The time of the gentleman has.
But may I respond briefly? In regards to these charges, there's always an element of prosecutorial discretion. A great example in today's world is marijuana is still illegal federally. It's everywhere. Prosecutors are choosing not to charge that. This bill gives the tools to law enforcement to go after, in an efficient way, the committed criminals doing harm in the United States. That's the target. And they're again, illegal re-entry or a conviction is what triggers the penalties of this bill.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Welcome to First Watch, where every morning matters. Here, we obsess over quality ingredients, ensuring every bite is perfect. No corners cut here, just delicious breakfast made with care and served with kindness. So whether you start yours with fluffy waffles, cage-free eggs, crispy bacon, freshly juiced kale tonic, or our signature bottomless coffee, we take your...
Thank the chairman. I want to speak to the bill generally. I think it addresses an important problem. I think it's a serious bill, and I think something needs to be done. But I cannot support the bill with mandatory minimums. I've been here a dozen years and haven't voted for a mandatory minimum. I think mandatory minimums run afoul of the intent of the structure of this government, which is to allow the judges and the juries to have discretion, because we cannot foresee here in this committee room every circumstance that might arise in the prosecution of these cases. And although I think it's otherwise a great bill, I will not be supporting it because it has mandatory minimums. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York, and then the gentleman.
Mr. Chairman, I want to pick up where the ranking member left off. Whatever the intent of the sponsor may be, the bill clearly says that someone who enters the country illegally twice shall be imprisoned not less than 10 years and may be imprisoned for any term of years or for life. In other words, if you come across the border twice, you can get life imprisonment without committing any crime other than illegal entry. It seems a little draconian and to have the possibility of a life sentence, in addition to which you can be imprisoned for 10 years or up to life, and there's no standard for when it should be 10 years and when it should be life or 20 years or anything in between. There's no guidance for the judge. And unlike what I think the sponsor said, there is no requirement for a felony as a precondition to a life sentence. All that is required is 2 illegal entries.
Will the gentleman yield?
I will.
Line 9, it says, who was convicted under this section at least 2 times.
Yes.
Convicted.
Convicted of 2 illegal entries. Yes, no, I'm not quarreling with that. So in other words, if you illegally cross the border twice, you shall be sentenced to at least 10 years and up to life for no crime other than illegally crossing the border twice. And there is no guidance for the judge as to whether it should be 10 years or 20 years or 30 years or life. Most statutes, in fact, all statutes, give some guidance for the length of prison. This doesn't give any guidance for the length of prison. It simply says if you've entered the country twice, you can be sentenced to at least 10 years. All right, can't be sentenced to 5, at least 10 years, but up to life, and no guidance within that.
Gentleman yield.
I will.
Well, again, part of this goal's aim is to deter.
What?
It is to deter. It is to deter illegal reentry.
Reclaiming my time.
Yes.
I don't doubt it's to deter illegal entry, and it certainly does that. But it still gives no guidance to the judge as to whether to sentence someone to 10 years or 11 years or 12 years or life imprisonment. And that doesn't make any sense. If you wanted to say, if you wanted to say that the first illegal entry shall be sentenced to 5 years and the second to 10, or the first to 10 and the second to 20, it'd be a little harsh, I think, but it would make sense. But to say 10 to life with no guidance to the judge, with no standards, that makes no sense.
Gentleman yield.
I'll yield to Ms. Ross.
Oh, thank you. And I'm going to want some of my own time after you do that. I wanted to make the point, and we've talked about this. You and I both represent North Carolina. We've talked about what you want to do, your main reason for even being here. This bill is everything to you. So I would hope you would want it drafted well. And I think the point that's being made here is, in addition to the mandatory minimum that Mr. Massey has raised, there isn't a disjunction between anything that's even longer than that. It actually says the mandatory minimum of 10 years and a prison sentence for any amount of time or life. And so it's not giving the judge the option of choosing between them. The judge has to do both. And so I just would ask the gentleman to consider that that might be a drafting error and not his intent. And, you know, it's going to take a long time for this bill to go everywhere. You know, the Rules Committee may never stop, and you may never get to rules. So let's take a little time. And if that is true, if it's truly your intent to give some judicial discretion to make sure that this bill doesn't mandate that judges do that.
Reclaiming my time, this bill says not less than 10 years and may be in prison for any years to life. It gives no discretion, it gives total discretion to the judge, no guidance, and that's the problem with the bill, in addition to its harshness. I'll yield.
Well, just briefly, again, a goal is deterrence, number one. Number two, mandatory minimums can be penetrated upon motion of the government. That's a well-established fact for substantial cooperation, 18 U.S.C., I think it's 3553E. Thirdly, mandatory minimums, whether it's drugs, continuing criminal enterprise, firearm statutes, et cetera, there's no discretion for the judge. That's what the attorneys...
Reclaiming my time.
That's what the attorneys...
It is a mandatory minimum in the bill.
The gentleman doesn't have time to reclaim.
And it is a mandatory minimum in the bill, and the maximum is life, and I would simply suggest that in looking at this bill, you give some standard to the judge for what to do. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I've kept Mr. Goldman waiting for 4 people, so I'm going there next, and then I'll come back to the gentlelady from North Carolina. If we don't, well, I'll go first, Mr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My colleague on the other side of the aisle, who shares a glorious past as a federal prosecutor in the DOJ with me, says that the goal is deterrence of this bill, that deportation alone is no deterrent to returning here. I think the chairman said the goal of this is to prevent members of the cartel or parts of terrorist organizations from coming back to this country. And it almost feels like we are living in completely disjointed universes from what is happening down the street.